After the first episode of Full Dive, I was sure I was going to love this show. I mean, the Cautious Hero author clearly wasn't a one-trick pony, and pretty much as people pointed out, it felt almost like a parody of SAO. And episode 2 just makes me enjoy the show even more. This series has such a way at capturing the idea of why our main character Hiro would even attempt to go back to this game. Because for, I'd say probably like the first third of the episode, we continue off where we left off, right? You know, we have best friend killer here. What is he going to do? And everything about this game is far too realistic, and it just kind of proves that maybe realism in games shouldn't ever get to this degree, because while sure, what Rayona says in this episode, if you lose your arm, you're not going to feel like you lost your arm, but you will feel like you were tumbled down a flight of stairs. And that's like, oh, okay, but why? I mean, sure, a level of pain would allow you to have more adrenaline in action, but do you really want to feel a cut on your hand as you're fighting? No. But as the episode gets progressing, and once they leave the game for the first time after having a hell of a time leaving because it's so realistic, you can't leave in combat. In most games, that's actually a pretty normal thing, like you can't save and exit out or something like that unless you want to restart everything you just did. The difference is game developers don't take it to the level that you can't turn off your console, or you can't let go of your controller, or something like that. But here, if your, childhood friend is trying to stab you in the throat, it's up for your fairy companion to blind her as you run for the hills and hopefully log out. Sure, when you log out, you don't actually have cuts, but it doesn't change the fact that as soon as he logs out, he does mention pretty much how he hasn't had that level of excitement in quite some time. Personally, I was a little worried that the reason he would go back into the game was going to simply just be that he found it slightly fun. But watching his real life and just how, even like his best friend, I think his best friend was pretty okay in this episode. I mean, he was kind of judging him for playing games in last week's episode, but he does apologize. He says, it's mainly a worry thing because seemingly his bullies strip him of all his money. He doesn't have many connections. He used to apparently be pretty good on the track field, right? So it just feels more like, hey, I know you like games, but you're not gonna get anywhere in life if that's all you do, which is a valid concern, all things considered. But even when he's home, his sister is basically saying, stop playing that. It almost feels like everyone views him as a disappointment outside of maybe his best friend who's saying, it's fine for you to have a hobby, but you used to have this really good skill for running. Maybe you should still try to do that because that's something that could take you somewhere. Everything about his life, even the good aspects, are pretty much saying don't play video games. So it's almost like slightly a rebellious thing, but also it's just like, I just want to play games and escape the world, and as shitty as this game is, it's the only thing I have left. The fact that you can't even restart this game because the save data is auto-saved to your gaming machine, and if you want to start the game over, not only would you probably have to get a new copy of the game, you'd have to replace your entire hardware. It's just, the level of realism in this game is so absurd, but it makes for such a ridiculously hilarious adventure. And they've honestly, I think, found a way of making us understand why the hell would you ever want to play this game. It kind of feels like the formula is he's going to play the game to the point of he's going to be either annoyed or he's just like, you know what, I'm satisfied, this wasn't that bad, and he'll leave. But it almost feels like the direction they're going is each version, reality or the game, are going to be so shitty that he'll leave one, and once the other version is so shitty, he'll go back to the other, and vice versa. Because this man has just been given a very bad hand of cards. That's pretty much the best way to put it. And watching the idea of introducing us to someone who actually had a very similar circumstance, we have our character Hiro who accidentally killed his best friend. This man was just like, hey, have you ever played a video game and you just wondered what would happen if you killed the civilians? And I was sitting there quietly nodding. I'm like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, even if you're kind of seeming a little psycho. Granted, I've never played a VR that realistic, so maybe my thoughts are a little different with a controller in hand versus actually having to strangle a character, which probably is why Hiro's like, what in the actual hell? But it's interesting because this guy, I have a feeling the two empty seats that he was talking to are probably the childhood friends that he ended up killing. It feels like the person that our boy killed last week is probably going to be a ghost that haunts him, and maybe that ghost will be a way of him navigating the sister or something like that. But when you see the end of the episode with him saying, hey, I'm going to help you, and then he just tells everyone that the best friend killer's there, to me, I actually don't feel like he's probably screwing him. I feel like because it's such a realistic game, he has to serve time. The entire town is looking for him, and there's no way for him to escape. I mean, this game is literally built around your actual physical body in the real world. You have to have the brain and the physique in order to beat the game, and only one person had. So I feel like the way he got out of that is simply by serving time. So most likely, it's probably not going to be a life sentence, because if it was a life sentence, they would either have to fake his death or he would have to jailbreak, and if he jailbreaks, he'll just be back to square one. So I'm wondering, because it's a more medieval-like setting, if like murder isn't going to be 20 years in the slammer, but maybe a couple of months. But still, this is a realistic game. Imagine if he got jail time and he couldn't escape until, like, he couldn't leave the game until the jail sentence was served. Holy shit, would that be something. But it feels like that's kind of the direction they're going, and for a player, most of this is not fun. Healing herbs, where you would normally touch it or drink it, you know, and standard RPG mechanic, you have to rub that shit in the wound and bandage it up. There's hardly any difference. The main, I guess, is because he did have a pretty big slash to the hand. A few days is probably not so bad, because it probably would have took a lot longer had he done nothing. Maybe this is the type of world that, you know, the blades are sharper than normal, he might have died of blood loss. There's so many absurd things about this, but I actually have to appreciate how, despite it being a very entertaining comedy anime, it's a very dark comedy anime for sure. The level of drama and I think the more personal moments, I think, outside of the game, it really gives you an idea of why, you know, he's probably beat everything he has. At this point, you know, he's stripped of his money, and it seems like that's going to continue for some time. There's no other option but to play this shitty game, and, you know, his life shitty, the game shitty, what's different, right? I mean, at the very least, it's not like when he's in the game, he gets stabbed, he's stabbed in real life. So if that was a mechanic, there would be no real way, I think, for the viewer to say, why is he still playing this? But because, like, when he, like, got out of the game, you know, he obviously felt it in the game, and maybe he has, like, lingering side effects. But it's not like if he gets stabbed in the heart in the game, he's gonna be like, oh shit, I gotta go the ER or something like that. They're definitely covering their tracks and making it believable why someone so down the dumps would play this piece of shit. But also just understanding that, like, at the same time, there's gonna be so many moments where he's like, why am I even doing this? The comedy remained pretty tight. I love the exaggerated reactions, and I think probably my favorite moment, which probably isn't most people's, because there's so many hilarious moments with, like, the best friend or one of the best friends, and just the banter between the fairy and him, and just how, like, he's saying everything you're saying, it makes it a shitty game. There's a moment where he gets cut and it's super dramatic. I'm like, oh, maybe they're going to focus a lot more on the drama side. And as I'm thinking that, they switch over to this exaggerated, sloppy character design where he's freaking out as a comedy anime should. I love how it doesn't take itself serious for the viewer watching, but for this character, you understand why this is hell on earth for him. It's just a really entertaining show that even if I'm not necessarily bursting out laughing, and I'm rolling on the floor, I need to pause the episode to collect myself, I'm entertained through and through, and I would say this episode entertained me even more than the first one. The first one showed us what we want this series to be and what it is going to be. This one just had a lot more fun with it, and I think might have put him in even shittier situations, but maybe even better, because at the same time, these shopkeepers won't turn you in, but they will charge you an arm and a leg extra for a pretty shitty piece of clothing, so I guess we'll see where it's going to go from here. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below on this dead game that our boy is trapped in, and like, if you were in his situation, let me know. Imagine you're put in his situation, life's that shitty. Would you still keep coming back to that game, or would you just, you know, sell that machine and just say, I'm gonna pick up sports at that point? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.